At my graduation dinner, Mom gave my sister a $14,000 bracelet, then handed me a cracked photo frame with my picture cut out. Dad laughed, "Even the frame rejected you." I walked out before dessert. The next morning, my sister was crying over what was hidden behind the glass. My name is Emmett Vane. I am 24 years old. I work as an appraiser's assistant at Holloway and Klein Appraisals in Columbus, where I spend my days learning to look at objects the way most people never bother to. Furniture, paintings, frames, ceramics, things people inherit without knowing what they have. Things they think are worthless that turn out to be something else entirely. My job is to examine what other people dismiss and tell them what is actually there. I had just graduated with a degree in art history from Ohio State. Full-time offer from Holloway and Klein starting the following Monday. The dinner at Terrace on 5th was supposed to be the family marking that occasion. They assumed the cracked frame was a prop. They assumed I would carry it to my car, feel the weight of it, and throw it somewhere on the way home. They assumed I would absorb it the way I had absorbed everything else and show up to the next family event with nothing on my face, because that was what I had done for 24 years and nothing had changed. They forgot that I open damaged frames for a living. The first thing I do with any frame that comes into the shop, cracked or warped or separated at the backing, is pull the board and check what is inside. Rosalind taught me this on my first day. Not because you expect to find anything, because that is how you look at something correctly. My grandmother chose a cracked frame because she knew it would reach the one person in this family who would open it. When I pulled the backing off her frame at 11 o'clock that Saturday night, I found an envelope with my name on it in her handwriting. She had been dead for 7 years. She had placed it there at least that long ago, before she ever gave it to me, before she ever said take care of it. She had known exactly whose hands the frame would eventually reach. My grandmother Eleanor was my father's mother. She died at 79, 7 years ago this past February. She was the only person in my family who ever looked at me the way Rosalind looks at a piece that comes through the shop, uncatalogued and undervalued, with specific, unhurried attention. She had given me the frame at my high school graduation dinner 8 years before last Saturday. She wrapped it herself, brown paper with a gross grain ribbon, and when I opened it, she said, "Take care of it." Not take care, the valediction. Take care of it. A specific instruction about a specific object. The frame was Victorian style, gilt wood, 8 by 10, with a crack running diagonally across the lower left corner. I kept it on my desk all 4 years of college. My parents had taken it back after her death. I had not noticed it was gone until the moment my mother slid it across the table toward me at a graduation dinner, and I recognized the gilt edge and understood that something had happened in the room that I had not yet caught up to. The pattern runs back further than that dinner. My sister Cecily is 27, 3 years older, art gallery coordinator, stylish and capable, and the organizing principle around which my parents have arranged their affections since before I was old enough to have an opinion about it. I want to say this plainly. My parents love Cecily more visibly than they love me. That is a fact. It expresses itself in dozens of small ways across a year, and in occasional large ways that strip away the plausible deniability. When I was 14, I made the junior varsity baseball team. I told my parents at dinner that evening. My father, good. My mother looked up from her plate. Is that the same schedule as last year? Tuesday, Thursday? Just Tuesdays. Good, she set her fork down. I just want to make sure it won't conflict with Cecily's weekend recitals. She needs rides. There were no weekend recitals currently scheduled. She was testing a concern she had already built, running the calendar of Cecily's life against the calendar of mine to see where I was taking up space. Practices are Tuesdays, I said. It won't conflict. Good, she picked her fork back up. I played 2 seasons. My parents came to 2 games, both in the first season. The second season, my mother said she trusted I knew how it was going, and they would check in at the end. They did not check in at the end. When Cecily turned 21, they rented a private dining room in Cincinnati and flew in 3 of her college roommates. The dinner had 12 people and lasted 4 hours, and my father gave a toast with note cards he had written in advance. I went. I sat at the table and I ate, and I listened to the toast, and when my father said Cecily had built something real from nothing, I looked at my plate and said nothing. When I turned 21, my mother called in the afternoon. "Happy birthday, honey. What are you doing tonight?" "Going to dinner with some friends from school." "Oh, that sounds nice. Anywhere good?" "Just a place downtown." "That's lovely. Well, have a good time." A beat. "Is your roommate going?" "The one from Columbus?" "Yeah, a few people." Good, good, another beat. "All right. Happy birthday. Love you." We hung up. She did not ask how the year was going. She did not ask about my classes or my internship applications or anything I had mentioned at Christmas. The call was 42 seconds. I know because I looked at the phone after. The most specific moment before last Saturday was the summer I was 19. I had taken an independent study in decorative arts history and spent the summer volunteering at an estate sale company in Columbus, learning how pieces were assessed and cataloged. My father's firm held their end of summer party at a country club in Dublin, and I went with my parents. One of my father's colleagues asked what I was planning to study. Art history, with a focus on material culture and appraisals. My mother, 3 feet to my left, said before the man could respond, "He's still figuring it out." She said it pleasantly. "The way you say something you believe is a kindness." The man smiled at me and moved on. At Cecily's graduate school completion dinner 2 years ago, my father gave a toast that lasted 7 minutes. He talked about her eye for art, her professionalism, her willingness to build something from nothing. It was a real toast. When I told my parents the previous October that I had been offered a junior position at Holloway & Klein, my mother said, "An appraisals company? Is that stable?" My father was in the other room. He did not come in. I almost told Rosalind about all of this once. At the shop, during a slow Tuesday cataloging an estate lot of Victorian silver. I had the version ready, compressed, just the shape of it. Then she said something about the lot, how families always fight over the prettiest things and leave the valuable ones unclaimed. I put my version back and thought about what she said for the rest of the afternoon. The restaurant was Constance's choice. My mother, Constance Vane, 54, interior decorator, chose Terrace on 5th because it had the right light and the right proportion, and because she had a relationship with the event coordinator who let her arrange the table settings herself. She arrived an hour before us. She had brought flowers from a florist she trusted and placed cards in her own handwriting and an arrangement of votive candles positioned with the focus she usually reserved for client installations. The table seated 12. There were 8 of us. The other 4 seats had been intended for family friends who canceled that week. Nobody rearranged the seating when the guest count changed. There was a reserved card on the chair to my left that nobody removed. I sat down and looked at it and did not say anything. Nobody mentioned it the entire evening. My father, Alton, is 57. Commercial real estate broker. Broad-shouldered. The kind of man who fills a room. He sat at the head of the table and did not look at me when I sat down. He was talking to my Uncle Terence about a property deal in Westerville. "Hey, Dad." He said hey back without turning his head fully in my direction and kept talking to Terence. Constance had pre-ordered for the table. 3 courses. She had accounted for every dietary consideration and emailed the confirmed menu to the restaurant 3 days prior. Everything was organized except whose dinner this was. Cecily arrived in a cream linen jacket I had not seen before. She hugged our parents. She hugged me quickly, lightly, the way you hug someone you are not sure how to place in the evening's arrangement. She sat down across from me and looked at the flowers. "Mom, these are beautiful." The first course came. The conversation moved around the table. Alton's deal, Constance's recent client in Bexley, Cecily's upcoming show at the gallery. My aunt asked what I was doing after graduation. I said I had a full-time position starting Monday at Holloway & Klein Appraisals. She nodded in the way people nod when they are not sure if what you have said is impressive or not. My Uncle Terence leaned across. "Appraisals? Like furniture?" among other things. He went back to the property deal. The second course arrived. Constance waited until the server had left the room. Then she reached under her chair and produced a flat box, jeweler's wrapping, pale blue paper, white bow. She set it on the table in front of Cecily. We wanted to acknowledge this properly. You've built something real, sweetheart. You've made this family proud. Cecily looked at her. Then she opened the box. It was a bracelet. Wide, gold, the kind that sits flat against the wrist with a weight that announces itself. I know the designer. $14,000, retail. Cecily held it up and the light came through the votives and hit it. Mom, her voice dropped. This is grandmother's style. Your grandmother's style. But made new. Constance reached across and took Cecily's wrist and fastened the clasp herself. She would have loved to see you wearing it. Cecily put her other hand over her mother's and held it there for a moment. The table made sounds of appreciation. My aunt said it was stunning. Someone took a photo. Alton raised his glass in Cecily's direction. To the woman of the evening. I sat across from this and watched it and said nothing. Nothing in the room had acknowledged that this was my graduation dinner. No mention of my degree. No mention of the position starting Monday. No mention of my name in the context of the occasion. The woman of the evening was not me. It had not been me in any room my parents had organized in 24 years, and they had organized a great many rooms. Then Constance reached under her chair again. She produced the frame, held it out toward me across the table, one arm extended, the gilt edge catching the candlelight. We thought you'd want something of grandmother's, Emmett. The warmth in her voice shifted register. Just slightly. Still pleasant, but different. It was in her storage. We thought you'd appreciate it. Something with history. The crack ran diagonally across the lower left corner, exactly as I remembered it from my desk at school. The picture inside was a family photo from a Christmas I could not place. My face had been cut out of it, not torn. Cut, the hole was clean, rectangular, the size of a passport photo. Someone had taken the time to make it precise. Alton looked at the frame. Then he looked at me. A smile moved across his face, the small, private kind. Even the frame rejected you. He laughed. The contained kind. The kind you have said 100 times in private before you say it once in public. The table did not join him. My aunt looked at her wine glass. My Uncle Terence looked at Alton with the expression of a man evaluating whether to intervene. He did not intervene. Constance set down her fork. Alton, the single word, the tone that meant, not in front of everyone. But she was still smiling, barely, the smile of a woman who had composed this scene and was watching it land. I picked up the frame, held it, set it back on the table, put my napkin beside my plate, took my jacket from the back of the chair and stood up. Emmett, honey, Constance's voice, patient, the voice she used with difficult clients. Don't be dramatic. I picked up the frame and walked out. I did not look back. I did not say anything. I found out later the dessert course had 7 chocolate tortes for the 8 people left at the table. Constance had put everyone's name in chocolate sauce on the rim of each plate. 7 names. Mine was not among them. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for 3 minutes before I started the engine. That particular clarity came over me, the one that arrives at the shop when a piece does not add up, and I understand I am going to have to be very patient and very systematic before I know what I am actually looking at. The frame went on the passenger seat. I did not throw it out. I drove home. At 11 o'clock that night, I was at my kitchen table with the frame in front of me and a magnifying lamp from work. Here is what I do when a frame comes into Holloway and Klein damaged. I assess the visible condition first, wood type, gilt method, period, extent of damage. Then I separate the backing from the frame, because the backing is where you find the interior history. Old papers folded behind the glass, photographs, labels, receipts, occasionally letters. People stored things in frames the way people now save things to their phones. The frame was there, the backing had space, and the thing needed somewhere to go. The first thing Rosalind taught me, before you assess what you can see, look at what might be behind it. My grandmother had given me this frame at my high school graduation with the specific instruction, take care of it. I pulled the backing board. It came away easily, meaning the glue had failed at the bottom seam, consistent with a piece that had been in storage. Between the backing board and the back of the glass, there was an envelope, sealed with wax, ivory, the stamp pressed with the ring she had worn on her right hand, the one with the small stylized E. My name on the front in her handwriting, in the blue ink she had always used for correspondence. Emmett. Not my last name. Not to Emmett. Just Emmett, the way you write a name when you are certain of the person and certain they will find it. I sat with it in my hands for 40 minutes before I opened it. Those 40 minutes had a quality I have not described to anyone. Part of it was professional reflex. You do not rush with a sealed document because rushing is how you tear things. Part of it was something else. I know now that those 40 minutes were the last period of time in which I did not know what my grandmother had done. And some part of me understood that the envelope was going to change something irreversible about my relationship to this family's history. I opened it. 3 pages, handwritten on her personal stationery, dated 4 years before she died. The handwriting was steady. She had not written it in distress. She had written it the way she did everything, deliberately, with the certainty of someone who has thought the matter through far in advance of putting pen to paper. She had seen, over the decades of her family's life, what she called the arrangement. She used that word specifically, and she did not apologize for it. She had watched who was held and who was handed something to hold on their own. She had watched my mother say he is still figuring it out at a country club in Dublin while I stood next to her with a plan already in motion. She had decided, as her estate planning was finalized, to make a correction. The family home in Worthington, which she owned outright, and a separate investment account held in her name, were to pass to me specifically, not into the general estate. The combined value, as of the date of the letter, was approximately $397,000. She had filed a formal codicil to her will with her estate attorney 2 years before writing the letter. The attorney's name and address were in the letter. The codicil was court-recorded. She wrote near the end, "The people who make you feel like the frame rejected you are wrong about more than they know. The frame holds what it was given to hold. So do you." She had placed the envelope inside the frame before wrapping it for my high school graduation. She had known what I would eventually become, or something close enough to it. I sat at the kitchen table with the letter for a long time after I finished reading. Then I photographed everything: the envelope, the letter, each page, the wax seal, the frame with the backing removed. I labeled the photographs and saved them in 3 separate locations. Then I went to bed. I did not sleep well, but I did sleep. If you are still here, I want to ask you something. Has someone in your family ever handed you the version of yourself they decided on before you had a chance to become anything else? If this is landing somewhere real for you, leave a comment. I read them. And if someone you know needs to hear this, share it with them. Now let me tell you what happened next. Before Rosalind, there were 3 texts from Constance. The first at 10:48 p.m., 45 minutes after I got home. "I hope you're okay. Last night was a lot." The second at 7:22 on Sunday, "Call me when you're ready to talk." The third at 8:09, "Dad and I think things got out of hand. We'd like to fix this." Fix, as if last night was a broken item that could be repaired. As if fix meant anything other than return to the previous arrangement on the same terms. I had read all 3 by 7 o'clock. I had also already photographed everything and found the contact information for Darden, Okafor, and Merritt in the professional directory, which matched the information my grandmother had written in her letter. I called Rosalind Mace at 7 Sunday morning. She is 48, senior appraiser at Holloway & Klein, 14 years at the firm, the person who trained me, and the person who picked up on the second ring. I told her what I had found. The dinner. The bracelet. The frame. The letter. All of it. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Don't touch anything else in that frame. Photograph everything exactly as you found it. Call an estate attorney today, not tomorrow. That was all she said about the strategy. Then, are you all right? Yes, I mean before the letter. Before any of this. I've been all right for a long time. I know. A pause. I'll come by this afternoon if you need another set of eyes. At 8:47, Cecily knocked on my door. She was still wearing the bracelet. She had not changed clothes. She had the look of someone who had spent the night assembling a question she did not know how to ask, who had arrived before she finished assembling it, because arriving felt more honest than not arriving. I stepped back and let her in. She sat on my couch and looked at the frame on the coffee table. The envelope was beside it, open now, my grandmother's handwriting visible on the front. Mom called me last night. She said you walked out. Yes, she said the frame was a joke. A family joke. A pause. She said Dad said something he shouldn't have. Something he shouldn't have. A moment. A slip. Something that happened in the room. Not the thing it actually was. Cecily looked at the frame. At the envelope beside it. What did you find? Grandmother left me something. Inside the frame. She was quiet. I watched something rearrange itself in her expression. Slowly. What kind of something? The kind her estate attorney has had on file since 2015. She looked at the bracelet on her wrist. Then she looked at me. The gold caught the morning light. $14,000. Your grandmother's style, but made new. Emmett. Very quiet. How much? The Worthington house. And an investment account. Combined? Close to $400,000. She sat with that for a moment. Then she looked at the bracelet again. I could see her doing the arithmetic, the specific arithmetic of someone who has just understood that the arrangement she grew up inside was more precisely calibrated than she had known. She knew. Not a question. She knew. Cecily set her hand flat on her knee, palm down. She looked at the frame. She looked at the envelope. She looked at me. What are you going to do? Call the estate attorney Monday morning. She nodded slowly. She did not say anything else. She stayed for about 20 minutes, sitting on my couch with her hands in her lap and the bracelet on her wrist, not saying much, which was more than I had expected from her and less than I had needed from her for a long time. When she left, she hugged me at the door, a brief hug, and walked down the hall without looking back. I stood in my doorway and watched her go and did not call after her. Rosalind arrived at 2 p.m. with 2 coffees from the place on 5th that she preferred. She sat at my kitchen table and looked at the photographs of the letter, the envelope, and the frame laid out in the order I had taken them. She read the letter twice. She set it down. Your grandmother was a precise woman. She was. She knew you were going to work in this field before you knew it. She looked at the photograph of the frame. She put it in the one place she knew you'd check. The backing. The backing. She slid the photographs back toward me. You know what to do. Call the estate attorney Monday. Call the estate attorney Monday. And Emmett. She looked at me. You don't need to explain yourself to them. Not to your parents, not to your sister. The document is the explanation. You don't add anything to it. She was right. I already knew it. But it mattered to hear it from someone who understood that the object tells the story, and the person holding it does not need to narrate. I called Philip Okafor's office Monday morning. Darden, Okafor and Merritt Worthington. The number was in my grandmother's letter. I had the estate file number, the photographs of the letter, the envelope, and the frame. Philip Okafor is 52, 24 years in estate law. His assistant put me through without a wait, which told me the file was already on his desk, which told me I was not the first call this process had been waiting for. He told me the codicil had been filed with the court in 2015 and had been in their estate file since Mrs. Vane's death. He said his firm had sent a letter to my parents following Eleanor Vane's passing in 2017, requesting confirmation that the estate was being properly probated in accordance with all testamentary documents. They had received a response indicating the family was handling the estate privately and that no further assistance from his office was required. The court-recorded copy has been in our files since 2015. We were never asked to proceed with it. He was not editorial about this. He stated it the way a person who has watched family estates go sideways for 24 years states facts, without surprise or judgment, because both are inefficient. Mr. Vane, I want to make sure I understand the current situation. The family home in Worthington and a separate investment account. You're the named beneficiary in the codicil, and you are requesting we initiate proceedings to complete the proper transfer. That's correct. And you have the original personal letter from Mrs. Vane, yes, and photographs of everything. A pause. I could hear him making a note. The home has appreciated since the original valuation. Current appraised value is approximately $310,000. The investment account has continued to accrue and stands at approximately $87,000. Combined close to $400,000. Correct. The codicil also specifies the investment account should transfer without penalty. There may be some estate administration costs, but they are modest. If you wish to bring the estate into proper compliance, we can initiate the process. Yes, I'd like to proceed. I'll need to schedule a formal meeting with all relevant parties to the estate. That will include your parents as children of the deceased and as the individuals who responded to our 2017 correspondence. I understand. The meeting will be informational and procedural. Mr. Vane, it is not a negotiation. The codicil is clear. The meeting was set for Thursday at 9:30 a.m. What they thought I was going to do in those 4 days? Call my mother back. Have some version of the dinner conversation after the fact. Accept the apology implicit in Constance's 3 texts and return to the arrangement. The arrangement had absorbed worse than a dinner. It had absorbed 24 years. 4 days was nothing. I spent Monday at Holloway and Klein on my first official full-time day. Tuesday, the same way. Wednesday, I met Philip Okafor in person to sign preliminary documentation and bring the original frame, the letter, and the envelope as provenance. Rosalind came with me. She sat beside me in the conference room and did not say anything that was not directly relevant to the legal process. I did not contact my parents. I did not contact Cecily. I let the scheduled meeting be the meeting. Here is what they thought I would do after the dinner. They thought I would carry the frame to my car and feel the specific weight of the insult and file it away in the same folder where I kept the toast at Cecily's graduate dinner and the birthday call from my mother that year and my father's office wall where my college graduation photo had. Never made it. They thought I was the kind of person who absorbed things in sequence and kept quiet because the quiet was agreement. They thought the frame was the period at the end of a sentence they had been writing for 24 years. They forgot that I open damaged frames for a living. They forgot that damaged frames are specifically what I examine, that the backing is the first thing I check, and that the thing hidden inside the thing they dismissed was always going to be what ended this. My grandmother knew exactly whose hands that frame was going to reach. Thursday morning. My parents arrived at Darton, Okafor and Merritt at 9:30. Cecily arrived at 9:35. I was already in the conference room. I had brought the frame. The conference room had a rectangular table, neutral walls, nothing with an opinion on them. Philip Okafor was at one end with his files. I was to his right. My parents took the chairs across from me. Cecily sat beside Constance. My mother looked at the frame on the table. Then she looked at me. 2 seconds. Before she composed herself, I could see it. The understanding. The arithmetic. She had retrieved the frame from Eleanor's storage boxes specifically because it was broken. Specifically because it seemed like the right vehicle for what she wanted to deliver. She had never opened it. She had not thought to open it. The idea that the broken, rejected thing she had chosen as a prop might contain something of value was outside everything she knew how to think about objects. Which is why she had hired an interior decorator and not an appraiser. Those 2 seconds were enough. Philip Okafor read the relevant portions of the codicil, precise and unhurried. He explained the probate process, the timeline, the property transfer, what the proper filing of Eleanor Vane's estate should have looked like 7 years ago. My father looked at the table during this, his hands flat on the surface, perfectly still. My mother looked at the window. Cecily looked at the frame. When Okafor finished, Eleanor never discussed this with me. My father's voice was even, controlled, the voice he used in business meetings when the number on the table was not the number he expected. The codicil was executed, witnessed, and filed with this office, Okafor said. Mrs. Vane's intentions are documented. My office sent correspondence to the estate in 2017. The response indicated the estate was being handled privately. That's our understanding as well. My father leaning forward slightly. We believed the estate was fully settled. We were not aware of any amendment. The amendment predated Mrs. Vane's passing by 2 years. It was court recorded. Constance looked at the frame on the table. Something moved across her face that she did not get all the way under control before I saw it. She looked at me. Emmett. The patient voice. The client voice. I think there's been some confusion here. Your grandmother loved you. Whatever this document says, I don't think she intended to create conflict in the family. The document says what it says. Okafor's voice, very dry. Mrs. Vane's intentions are clearly stated. I'm sure they were stated at the time. Constance sat back slightly. But Eleanor made decisions toward the end of her life that the rest of us didn't always understand. She was not always in the clearest state of mind. Constance, my father. One word. She stopped, looked at her hands. Alton looked at the table. His jaw shifted. The hands still flat on the surface. What does this actually mean? Practically, Okafor walked them through it. The property transfer. The investment account. The timeline for proper probate completion. The home in Worthington, which they had been maintaining for 7 years, as if it were part of an estate they controlled. It was not. Eleanor never discussed this with me, my father said again, quieter, to no one in particular this time. Not a legal position. Just the statement of a man trying to understand how something this large had been sitting in a file drawer 7 years without anyone knowing. My mother looked at my father. My father looked at the table. Cecily looked at the frame. There was nothing else to say after that. In the parking lot, Constance was by her car when I came out. Emmett. She said my name like a question. I kept walking. Emmett, her voice sharper now. We need to talk about this properly. Not in a conference room. I turned around. Looked at her. Call me when you're ready to talk, I said. The same words she had texted me Sunday morning. The same offer, now reversed. She opened her mouth. Your grandmother always made things more complicated than they needed to be. She could not stop herself from blaming Eleanor. She had handed me the thing that ended her control of the arrangement, and her first instinct was to be annoyed at the person who had put it there. I got in my car. Rosalind was parked 2 spaces down. She had waited. She looked at me through the windshield and lifted her chin once, asking. I shook my head. She nodded, and we both drove out. My mother called 11 times in the week following the meeting. I answered once, on the 5th call, a Wednesday afternoon. This isn't what grandmother would have wanted. Her voice careful, the client voice deployed on family. Grandmother was the one who filed the codicil. We have documentation of what she wanted. A pause, longer than I expected. Emmett, she was elderly. She was making decisions without consulting the rest of us. Your father and I maintained that house for 7 years. We put in the gutters in 2020, the furnace in 2022. We did that because we considered it a family asset. You did that for a house that the court-recorded codicil directed to me, which you would have known if you had responded to Mr. Okafor's letter in 2017. Another pause. When she spoke again, the patience had thinned slightly at the edges. I think we could work through this if you would just come and sit with us. As a family. I'll be in touch when I'm ready. I hung up. She has not called since. My father has not called at all. My Uncle Terrence sent a text 2 weeks after the meeting. Hope things settle down. I read it and thought about him at the dinner looking at Alton after the frame joke, making his evaluation. Deciding not to intervene, I put my phone back on my desk. Cecily's email came 3 weeks later. 4 paragraphs. She had not known about the codicil. She had not known what was in the frame. She was sorry about the dinner, not specifically about the bracelet or the joke, but about what the evening had communicated. She had been wearing the bracelet when she came to my door because she fell asleep at our parents' house and left before anyone was awake, and she was not thinking clearly. She hoped we could talk at some point. There was something real in those 4 paragraphs and something still operating from the old arrangement. Something that hoped talk at some point meant a return to how things had been before the frame. I did not know which part was larger. I did not reply. The estate process took 6 weeks to complete. The property transfer was finalized. The investment account transferred. The family home in Worthington, which my parents had been maintaining as though it was eventually theirs to distribute, was now mine. Legally mine since 2015. We had all just not known it yet. I listed it with a real estate agent referred to me through Holloway & Klein. Current market value, $315,000. There are decisions to make about what to do with it. I am making them without urgency, which is a new experience in this family. 6 weeks after the dinner. My desk at Holloway & Klein. My colleague Adrian set a piece on my desk this morning, a small enamel box from the 1920s. Lid stuck, interior unknown. You're better at stuck lids than I am. I said I would look at it after lunch. On my desk there are also 3 items from a consignment lot we picked up Tuesday. A mid-century lamp base. A silver cigarette case monogrammed with initials that don't match the family the lot came from. And a mahogany box I have not gotten into yet. Rosalind passed my desk this morning. She looked at the backlog. You're slower since you went full-time. I'm being more careful. Same thing. She kept walking. She was right. The frame is also on my desk. I put my graduation photo back inside it, the one they cut out. I found it in my jacket pocket when I got home from the dinner. I must have picked it up from the table without knowing why. Some reflex, some part of me that understood before the rest of me did, that I was going to want it. Wallet-sized, cut edges still clean. I slid it behind the glass and put the backing back in place and set it on the corner of my desk where I can see it. The crack is still there, running diagonally across the lower left corner. I almost turned back at the door of the restaurant. I was in the hallway and I almost stopped. Almost went back in and said something with the frame in my hand and the room full of people. I had a version of it ready, a single question. What did you think was inside it? Something that would have landed without explanation. Then I thought, the question is already answered. The room already knows what they think is inside it. The question does not need me there to be answered. I kept walking. I almost called my mother on the highway home. Her name on the screen, phone in the cup holder, a stretch of I-270 where the road goes flat and straight and the impulse to resolve things hits you because there is nothing else to look at. I drove past it. Whatever she would have said at 10:30 Saturday night, she said in a better version of it in those 3 texts the next morning. Those texts told me everything I needed to know about the nature of the apology being offered. I almost asked Rosalind when she came by Sunday afternoon whether I was doing the right thing. She sat across from me and read through the photographs of the letter and the envelope twice, and she looked at me. What are you going to do? Call Philip Okafor. Then that is what you should do. I almost said, is it the right thing? She looked at me the way she looked at pieces that came in misattributed, patient and certain and completely uninterested in the story the previous owner had told about them. I did not ask. I already knew the answer. My grandmother said, take care of it. I took care of it. I think about what she did. She watched this family for 40 years. She watched who got the toast, who got the gift card, who got the seat beside the empty chair. She did not make a scene about any of it. She did not give my parents a speech. She wrote a letter, filed a document, and put both somewhere she knew the right person would eventually look. She was a patient woman. She understood what I was still learning, that the frame is not the story. The frame holds the story. And the person who takes the time to open the backing, who does not assume the surface is the whole thing, is the person who finds what is actually there. The people who decide something is broken or worthless or suitable only for a joke tell you more about themselves than about the object. My grandmother decided, 9 years before I opened the backing, that the frame was worth something to someone specific. She was right. The frame held what it was given to hold. So did she. And now, so do I. If someone has handed you the broken version of yourself and called it a gift, look at it carefully. The thing they dismissed might be exactly where what matters was kept. Leave a comment if this landed somewhere real. Share it with someone who needed to hear it. Thank you for listening to Family Secret Tales. There is more where this came from, and I will see you in the next one.